were remarkable years. Remarkable years because we were able to achieve certain things that were not handled for quite some years. One of which was the PIB that became the PIA. Granted that no piece of legislation is a perfect legislation. We have had a paradigm shift from where we were, from where we used to be, to where we ought to be, if not fully, at least nearly. It's a big step that we took. Many never believed that it was going to happen. But I'm happy that we were able to achieve it. We broke that jinx. And it was necessary. It was not self-serving. It was a response to reality. The reality that there is an energy transition from fossil to alternative sources of energy. Therefore, the need to change the legal framework to reflect this transition could not be overemphasized. You'll recall that this night assembly in the last 2 years have also handled 2 budgets, and we are about doing the 3rd one. A part of the Constitution that has been ignored for quite some time by previous assemblies was the cycle of the budgets, the calendar, which before now has been done in a haphazard pattern, with no respect to the constitutional timeline as duly provided for in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But this particular assembly decided to put that on the front burner as part of our legislative agenda. Many never believed that it would be achievable. But today it has been achieved, not once, but twice, in a back-to-back pattern. We are about making this innovation a tradition, a new tradition, where it will now become old-fashioned for budget passage to be seen in an epileptic pattern. Kudos to the 9th Assembly. As you know, the issue of security, which borders on Section 14, Sub 2 of the Constitution, and the welfare of the citizens of this country is a responsibility for every government. And though we are 3 arms of government, we are one government. Therefore, we have taken steps to ensure consistently that the security needs of the country was also put on the front burner by consistently, persistently insisting on a change in the security architecture of the country, which took about 98 motions on security. We've gotten a new set of people with new ideas, new energy. And the question becomes, have you gotten to El Dorado? And the answer is not yet. But the glimpse is clearer. We can now see the light at the end of the tunnel. Did we stop there? No. For the first time in the history of the National Assembly, we organized the Security Summit, which, through our stakeholders mapping, was able to bring in major decision makers across the nation to interact with us on the analysis of the security needs as well as profiling solutions. It did not stop at having that summit. Recommendations came from that summit. Beyond the recommendation, the reports came as a result of that summit. This report was presented to Mr. President and Commander-in-Chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who was delighted, highly elated, that though he remains the Commander-in-Chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, a partnership from the House of Representatives and the Senate, another arm of government, in solving the headed needs of our security, was a step in the right direction and a display of the conviction that though we are three arms of government, we are one government. Out of this resolution, out of this recommendation, out of this report forwarded to Mr. President, the House has generated about 9 security bills, which we know that with these bills we'll be able to bridge various gaps existing in the security space. Those bills were as a result of proper interpretation of the needs in this space. We are hopeful by the time we're able to tidy up all these bills before the National Assembly at the moment, another score, another good step, another good mile will be covered. We started last year on the yearning of Nigeria, the hunger of Nigerians, to reshape the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which is almost becoming obsolete. Obsolete because the society is dynamic. And as the society progresses, different needs are defined. Ways of solving those needs, majorly, as a nation, should be found in the grundum of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which is the Constitution. The wisdom of the leadership of the House and the Senate, we decided to go for a review of the Constitution. Last year, we scored major miles, making sure that various steps that is needed in the process of amending the Constitution, the whole 9 years of amending the Constitution was taken. And as we speak, public hearings have been conducted. Most of these team members have gone around the Federation. A step in the right direction. Granted, so many people want us to immediately make this amendment, review this Constitution, but we cannot sacrifice quality on the altar of speed. So we urge Nigerians to be patient so that we go thoroughly, so that at the end, we can boldly say that the preamble of this Constitution, which says, we, the people of Nigeria, will indeed be a reflection of we, the people of Nigeria's position. Bear with us, Nigerians, be patient with us to ensure that at the end of the day, whether it be in this third year, this third section of the Ninth Assembly or the fourth section of the Ninth Assembly, our mind is made up. We are committed that this Constitution has to be reviewed in our time. The same way you believed us with the PIB, though many had a dissenting opinion and pessimistic, but we were able to pull it through. We urge Nigerians to believe us, that we have seen the gaps that you have seen, and we are determined to close those gaps. This will be occupying the front burner as we resume. And in addition, the National Assembly will be looking at the Electoral Act, which you know was one of the major steps we took last year. This major step was not taken without difficulties. Difficulty that is associated with bicameral legislature, where perspectives may vary a little bit with regards to positions on the proposal bill proposal before the two chambers. Many have observed that the section or the clause 58 sub 2, the one before the House of Rep, and the 58 sub 3, the one before the Senate, appear to be have a little variation. But we are assuring Nigerians not to be worried, because in the course of managing the legislative responsibility of the Parliament, there is a procedure that is known as the conference committee. When there are issues like this, the committee will sit and cross the T's and dot the I's. In my last conversation with the leadership of the National Assembly, I was firmly assured that the two chambers are busy nominating the number of people that will be in this committee today or tomorrow, in no distance time. And the mandate that is given to this committee will be a mandate that will be delivered within a very short time. Many are worried. Are you sure we will not be caught up by the activities that is associated with electioneering campaign? We want to assure Nigerians that we are committed. Before the Christmas holidays, it is our intention, we are pushing towards that the Electoral Act will be forwarded to Mr. President, and the Mr. President hopefully will assent to it. That is our commitment. Because we know we cannot enter into the 2023 process of election without having this particular legal framework reflect the needs of Nigerians. One of the things that we are going to handle as we have resumed as well is the issue of the budget. Like I mentioned before, we are insisting on January to December. And if we must achieve that, work has to start now. And because we are doing this in partnership with the executive, the good spirit of the executive, and in line with our timelines that we gave to the executive, on the 8th of July, the executive presented the MTEF to the House for our consideration. And you know the purpose of MTEF. You know the significance of MTEF as defined by Section 11 of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. And it had to be a 3-year plan that includes 2022, 2023, and 2024. And it is from here that policies of government will emanate from. We asked the Finance Committee to stay back, not to enjoy the entirety of their holidays. And so from the 16th of August to the 26th of August, this committee sat. And the mandate of this committee was to look at the various assumptions and the parameters used by the executive in formulating the MTEF. Because of doing that, a lot of analysis took place and some findings were made. Some we are in tandem with, some we believe look dusted and needs some clarification. It was observed in the course of the discussion, in the course of the interactive section, which was hard for the sake of establishing financial discipline and probity, that the MTEF relied on the forecast of the World Bank, the price of crude oil to be at an average of $60 per barrel. Another assumption was that the production of our oil is going to be 1.88 million barrels per day. Another assumption was that foreign exchange was going to be at 410.15 for 2022, 2023, and 2024. Another assumption also was that inflation rate in 2022 will be at 13%. In 2023 will be at 11%. And in 2024 will be at 10%. GDP was programmed to be at 4.20% GDP growth. In the course of doing this analysis, certain findings that were made by the committee, which is what is going to occupy our front burner when we resume. One of which was the data that was not coherent between the agencies, like the custom, the PPRA, the NNPC, and all the rest of them, especially on issues like what exactly is the amount of crude oil produced per day. Secondly, what is the level of our PMS consumption per day? These things are necessary because there is a determination by the House to close up areas of leakages of funds so that the federal government will have enough to take care of the welfare of citizens. It was also observed that some MDAs were not remitting sufficiently to the Federation accounts. They were under-remitting. And there are some other agencies that were not remitting at all because the Establishment Act did not give them that permission to remit to the Federation account. As we resume, we are going to be looking at issues like this. We need to amend some of those Establishment Acts. Because of the impact of COVID, the government is looking for money from left, right, and center. And if there are leakages that have been encouraged by the Establishment Act, that piece of legislation will be looked into by this House as we resume for possible amendment. And you know the intention, like I mentioned to you. It is also important to note that what was seen as the aggregate revenue available for 2022 was the sum of 7.26 trillion as the average revenue for the country, and about 3.16 trillion will be coming from oil-related sources. And it is important to note that in 2022 expenditure framework is put at a total of 13.98 trillion by the MTEF. And capital budgets or capital expenditure account for only 26% of the total expenditure. That worries me because of the continued provision of subsidy, which is a drain to this government. We need to increase that. The House believes that capital projects should be increased from what it is to what it ought to be. So, as we resume, these are the things we are going to look at to see the IGR discrepancies in the data provided by the Custom, NNPC, PPRA, Petroleum Equalization Fund, and DPR regarding daily crude production and PMS supply in Nigeria. We need to tidy that up. And but we know also that the passage of the Petroleum Industry Act is expected to ensure efficiency in the sector to the benefit of the national revenue. That's why I was celebrating our ability to break the jinx of 20 years by making sure that PIB became PIA, because if we're talking about revenue, we must ensure that the legal framework, the legal regime of the petroleum industry, reflects that which adds value to our revenue. And we also looked at the recommendation of the Committee of Finance. Within this period, they had an interactive section, and these are going to be some of the things we are going to discuss in the course of our deliberation in few days to come. That we should meticulously, not as before, look at the budget of 2022. Not that before we did not look at it, but because of COVID, our eyes are clearer. Our needs are much. We have to spend more time, and that's why we want to start early to critically analyze the needs assessment element of the budget. not just the political element of the budget, but the needs assessment element of the budget to know whether it leads to national development or national underdevelopment, by making sure that projects that have repeated themselves severally across so many projects will be weeded up and new things injected that represents the needs of some of these people that have been captured by those representing them. And also the urgent need to establish Nigeria's actual daily PMS consumption, as data from these stakeholders are not tallying. We have to do something about that. It's one of the things we are going to do as we are resuming. And I have mentioned about amending the legislations to have the agencies stop spending their IGR. Agencies that are yet to appear before the Finance Committee will be re-invited. And if we invite them and they fail to come this second time, upon resumption, their capital and overhead expenses may be removed from the 2022 budget. Let me repeat, agencies that were invited by the Finance Committee for that interactive section who could not make it, they are going to be invited again. If for the second time they fail to come, we are going to ensure that we remove their capital and overhead expenses from the 2022 budget. We're also looking at the benchmark that have been set by the MTEF, which, like I mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned it, was at 57 for 2020, $57 per barrel, 57 in 2023, in 2022, 55 in 2023, and 55 in 2024. We are thinking, the committee, in their recommendation, believe that the benchmark should not be at 57, it should be at 60. And that will be debated as we resume. There is a projected new borrowing of 4.89 trillion. We are looking at approving it only on the condition that there is the provision of the details on the borrowing plan and where it is going to, because it was reflected in the MTEF. Now, when you break down this proposed expenditure for 2022, which is at, like I mentioned before, 13.98 trillion, you have a makeup of total recurrent non-debt of 6.21 trillion, personnel costs by the MDAs at 3.47 trillion, and of capital expenditure exclusive of transfers of 3.26 trillion, special intervention recurrent amounting to 350 billion, and special intervention capital of 10 billion naira. We are thinking this should be approved, but is subject to the debate of the House. The Nigerian Custom Service, it is our belief they should accelerate the process of installing scanners at the port to curb underpayment of custom duties. Like I mentioned, the legislative arm is working hand in hand with the executive to see that we shore up the revenue of the country, seeing what we have gone through or what we are still going through with COVID. So, like I mentioned, these are some of the things we are going to be looking at when we resume on the budget, the constitutional review that we are doing, the electoral act that we need to tidy up, and other interventions that have to do with security.